Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Hi everyone. We're telling your followers that you're starting a live video. Okay, good.
Can you still invite me, or how would that work?
You will have to.
I still do, right?
Yeah, you can if you want. You can just put it somewhere else.
Okay. Yeah, why don't we do that?
So while Cora is setting her phone up, welcome to this very impromptu IG Live today. So obviously now I am in Singapore, and I just did I just taught at the 𝘍𝘳𝘰𝘮 over the weekend, and Cora was there as well. We just get her to come in. We move this upside down.
Is it?
Yeah. So it's just like when you're doing it normally. Like this. So actually just
Okay.
turn it off. Yeah.
Find a way.
Okay. All right. So I'm very excited to be here today. Well, I mean, I've been in Singapore for a couple of days now, and so today we'll be talking about how to get a interview or an audition as a yoga teacher with the yoga studio, or and then Cora, I think she will talk a little bit about how to get the job after you get the studio. Okay, but of course, I mean, there's no guarantee in terms of getting a job in a yoga studio, because I mean, you send out, like any jobs in the world, you send out a lot of CVs, and there's no guarantee that you will get a reply. But then once you get a reply, let's say the yoga studio is interested in seeing you, what can we do to maximize the chances of getting hired? So I think this is what we're really talking about.
So I think Victor, you are going to talk about, like, in the beginning, how after we send out a CV, when you get a call or asking you to go audition, what's the preparation? And I will talk about in the audition.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe before that.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you.
Maybe before that, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So when you start, like, how many CVs do you send out? Quite a bit, right?
You mean real job or yoga job?
Yoga.
Okay, so can I be very frank?
You don't need it.
I've always been quite fortunate that, people would, come to me and ask for different ways of working with them, be it teaching in their studio or workshop. So, because I think a lot of times they've seen me teach elsewhere. So, I think that, in that way, and I think we can even talk a little bit about that later. If you're able to teach elsewhere outside from the studio setting, then people actually do notice you. So you can hopefully get asked to teach.
Yeah.
So because the thing is, when you're teaching, say, when I was a @𝘍𝘳𝘰𝘮 ambassador, I teach in a community class, or when I was teaching in various yoga festivals, that's almost more like an audition or interview, if you will. So I don't really need to. I haven't really actually had to send CVs or whatnot to teach where I'm teaching now.
I guess like the first in line, I would do, like, unless it's a big studio that basically say, it requires X number of years of experience. It's always good to start with the studio that you practice at.
Yeah.
Or you do the TT at.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Start there.
Yeah. So I think, I'm gonna, start to delve a little bit more into that. But you mentioned that, okay, well, maybe you can teach in the studio where you do your TT. And I think people have this misconception that because you graduate from their program, therefore they will be more likely to hire you. The answer is no. The answer is no. But then at least maybe the lead teacher of that TT would already know you, so they might lead you to the right person who is responsible for hiring. So that actually leads to my first point, how do you even get noticed if you just finish your teacher training? I think first of all, you need to figure out which studios you want to teach in first. There are so many different studios in town now, in Hong Kong and Singapore. So you just need to figure out where you want to teach. And you really can't just say, okay, well, I don't really care where I teach because as soon as I get a job, that will be great. You could think it that way, but then, maybe write down a list of yoga studios that you want to teach in first. Like maybe that can be just 5 or 10, and do your research. What are the studios that are in town, that are around you? So then once you have that list, you start going to those studios. You start to practice there. You start to get your presence known. Okay? If you have a good practice, if you have a strong practice, then people would notice you. And when you go to a studio to practice, that also gives you an opportunity to say you need to see you want to see what the teachers are like. You want to see what the students are like, right? So it's like you want to get a job in a supermarket, but you've never shopped there before. So what are you going to offer to that supermarket? Really nothing. So you need to know the studio first. And so that the studio manager, or even down to the person who checks you in, would know your name. Okay, so yes, that means you have to pay a little money, buy maybe a 10-class pass in order to see it as an investment. Okay. Yeah.
I guess if you ended up sending like a bunch of CVs and saying, okay, like I can't practice it everywhere. I think the first thing is pick a few that you think you would like to teach there, and then if you do get if you send out the CV, you do get an audition, please go and take a class or two.
Yes.
Is to actually feel the vibe, feel the how exactly what you said, right? How the teachers are like, how the students are like, how the classes are like, and you also get yourself comfortable in that environment, right? In that particular classroom, and you feel prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Preparation is so important. Like when it comes to any job interviews, or I think what we're talking about today is it transcends across different fields. It's not just yoga.
Well, but we are lucky because if you're in a banking job, you can't check out the bank first, right? I mean, like you can't, but yoga
But
you can.
Actually, you can. Like I think I'm not saying that you need to open a bank account there. But then you go to the bank, you see what the bank is like. I mean, there's always a level of research required, and I think this is what a lot of people have missed when it comes to job applications, whether it's with a yoga job or with any job in the first place. Yeah, and once you say, let's say you go to that studio enough, then maybe start talking to the receptionists or the one who's responsible for checking, because you might be lucky that it is the studio owner who's checking you in, and get to know the owner, and I think it's really important that you find out who is responsible for hiring from that yoga studio, and because then you know who to talk to, and yes, it might be important to prepare and send a CV, but it's always a better idea. It's always an advantage that the studio owner or the manager can actually place you to a piece of paper. Excuse me. And the reason why I'm saying that is that I traveled to Auckland a few years ago before COVID. I was just there for holiday, and I signed up. I bought a package and just go to a local studio, and I went there every day. And at the end of and I think during the package, the middle of the package, the students started asking me questions. Said, "Do you have a really strong practice? Are you a teacher?" I said, "Yeah." But I wasn't really planning to teach anything, so I wasn't really saying much. And then I think towards the end of the trip, it was one of the owners who was at the reception. So they're like, "Oh, can you come back to teach a workshop?" And I didn't even say anything. I didn't even put it out there. Well, I'm a teacher. I'm looking for a job. It's just that, but it's really important that you go and show your face.
I have that experience too.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go skiing, like I would go to this studio and eventually it was like, you come back and teach next year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we actually, I think I see a few friends joining. We have Will, who is also a yoga teacher at a very big yoga studio in Hong Kong. Darren, I think he's about to be a yoga teacher. So I'm just gonna say hi virtually. Verbally, hi. And then who else has joined? I don't know whether they're still here. Enteng is here. Yeah, good. IC, who's used to be a yoga teacher at one of the largest yoga studios in Hong Kong. Again, she's now, I think she's working for Hong Kong Clinic.
Yes.
Hong Kong Sports Clinic. I don't know if I can say that. But anyway, here we are. So back to us. So once you go to that studio, you get your presence known, you start digging around and see who's the owner or the manager, then maybe alright, so yeah, so close it, pay attention. Alright, now and so then you can start talking to different teachers from that studio that you're interested in. And when I say that studio, it could be actually plurals, like those studios, because I mean it's hard work. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it to you for you. It will sometimes when we're students, we just go to a studio and we just have that member or student mode, and just go in, take the class, switch off, and then leave. But if you're actually looking to do to start teaching there, you might actually need to be a little bit more aware. When you're practicing as a student, look around. Let's just think about if you were a teacher there, what would you feel, or how can you add? What values can you add to that studio? Yeah, I think this is really important because a lot of times when we go to a job, we think that, okay, well, this is what I can get. But for someone to hire you, what do they get in return? Like, especially if you're a newer yoga teacher, right? Yeah. Why should I hire you? Yeah. So you need to think about what value you are adding to that company or that yoga studio. So you need to talk to the teachers. You need to start your analytical thinking. Yeah. What is what they are doing well, what they're not doing, what they're not doing so well. So you can start adding to that.
I think that's a really good point because it does. Even when you do like research, you would see every studio teach like hatha, vinyasa, hot, and whatever. But until you actually go there and check it out, then you would, and then see yourself as a teacher there, then you would know, okay, how's the level of the students? Yeah. What are the vibes? Is it more gentle? Like, what age group do people? Is it mostly women, more men? Like, and then you know a little bit more. So, and then you can start to thinking about how to add value, or how to position yourself when you come into the audition, or even like, is there any specialty classes that you can offer? You can offer. It's like, I can teach chair, I can teach wheel, or whatever that is, right? Yeah. It's just, it's just knowing who you might be working for well, and I think again, as much as you said that you can do research in any job, true, but yoga, you really can do some very strong preparation before you even start the position.
Exactly. So talk to the teachers so that you can find out as much about the studio as you can. Maybe even talk to the members. Yeah. Like just be nosy. Like, oh, whose class? I know this is like playing some sort of spy game here, but like, whose class should I go to? Like just say, I just bought this new package. Talk to the students. Whose class should I go to? Like find out more. Talk to people. Don't just rely on their websites or their Instagram.
Yeah.
But that also leads to my next point, which is you have to have some sort of online presence. Yes, maybe it's not the only way to find out more about who you are, but let's say if I don't know, if I own a studio, or if I run a studio, and I don't know who you are, one of the best ways to do that is to Google about you, right? Or you go to Instagram to see what your practice looks like, what you're like in, kind of what your personality is like, at least on Instagram. So I think that's something that is worth thinking about as well.
That's a good point, because ultimately we are in a people's business and heart-centered business, meaning that as much as you think your techniques and skills are very important, actually it's your character that the studio owner will be looking at. And if they can look into your social media profile, they would have a sense of who you are before even meeting.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw in one last tip, is that a lot of times smaller yoga studios, they will introduce you as a sub-teacher.
Yes, that's my point.
Oh, did I steal your point?
No, that's the point I want to add. Covers.
Okay. Yeah, so start covering classes, and it's almost like a test or like a mini job interview for these new teachers additions to the studio. And I can guarantee you the managers or the studio owners would always ask the members what your class was like. So you should also ask, after let's say you've been given that opportunity to cover a class or two, ask the members, ask the students what they think about your class, and ask the studio owners or managers for their feedback.
Yeah,
I
think most studios don't mind having a couple more cover teachers in the bank. So there's a highly likelihood that even you may not get anything in the end, or even one class, but at least you're on the sub list, and that's a good thing. One more little tip is, I think, when you really are ready to start to teach, and teach a couple of community classes with friends and things like that, so you have something to show that you have some experience you haven't done. Right? So I've taught a couple of community classes and have something in both in your real experience and also in your studio, whatever that is, so you can talk about that. So that's my point of the preparation.
Because if they like you as a cover teacher, they will put you on the regular schedule.
I know people who are like cover queens or kings, and they're very good cover teachers because they're always available, they always show up, and exactly.
So what happens when, let's say, you've been given an opportunity to interview with our studios, Cora?
Okay, so I'm going to focus on, let's say you get a call and say, all right, you're going to come in to have an audition. Now, every studio is different, so they may just free flow and just say, oh, you're just going to come in and teach 20 minutes, 25 minutes, or they may give you a post to teach. So anything may happen, right? So I can't really how to say it. So it really depends on what the studio tell you to do. But I think most studios now would ask you to come in and teach maybe 20, 25 minutes. But I've heard 5 minutes, and sometimes and I have heard people go into a interview which is only the owner, or they may throw in a couple of like staff, which I've had that before, like even including like receptions, right? Or I've seen I've heard people who basically is facing like a full pattern teacher, so anything can happen. So you just have to play with it a little bit. But I'm just going to give a couple of points on preparing for your audition. So number one is keep your sequence simple. It doesn't really matter how what you ended up teaching. I think most of the studios, at least they want to teach a good general class, meaning that a hatha class or vinyasa class, and teach good basic pose as well, right? So it doesn't really matter if you can like fly up to a handstand or whatever. I think that would be like 1% of the students, right? So if you can actually teach Surya Namaskar, like sun salutation very well, which can fit you into vinyasa a class very well, or teach like standing poses, foundations poses very well, you have a much higher chance of getting hired than teaching like a very complicated arm balance transitions, right? So keep your sequence simple, I think is like number one key. Any?
I absolutely agree. Like I've seen a lot of teachers interviewing for a class because they're so eager to impress.
Yeah.
They just teach the most complicated things. Just beware that the more complicated the sequence that you design to teach, that means the more you need to prepare, the more chance you will mess up at the interview.
And also, to be honest, like if you are, let's say, given like 20 minutes to teach, you can actually teach a well-round 20 minutes from start to finish, from opening to the end, meaning that you can actually plan the 20 minutes, full class, which people will have a good experience walking out. But if you teach something complicated, there's actually not enough time for you to show your opening, your middle, maybe leading to something a little bit more challenging, and the winding down and closing, right? So keep it simple is just a better way to show your best in a short amount of time, because you probably will only have like 15-20 minutes. So keep it simple, number one. Second is, I know you might be scared, but try your best not to do the class. Right? That's your last resort until you're really brain stuck and you need to get on the mat. It's way better to show that you can see students and observe students than you doing the class yourself, right? So try to not do the class and just talk, because that will show your observation skills, which is, I think, would really make you stand out. And if you do want to, in your audition, show like demoing, that's great, but that's not your show off time. Demo a simple pose, demo something very simple, and talk about more alignment instead of thinking about how, you know what, I'm gonna demo again, something too funky or something too advanced. It's not your show off time. It's the time to show off your teaching skills, not your practice.
Oh, actually, within that 20 minutes, I totally agree that the majority should be done, but should be talking. But I would also maybe add, like you said, 1 or 2 demos. But then also maybe 1 or 2 adjustments.
Yes.
Just to ask that at the beginning of in the interview, who doesn't want to be adjusted? Because then people would know that, okay, you don't want to be adjusted to that. But then otherwise, you can also, show that you don't have to adjust every single person.
No.
But one or two.
So that leads to my third point. So my third point is observe your students and give verbal adjustments. So observe your students, which is much better than doing it on mat. And then give verbal adjustments. So even don't worry about the owner's name. I would, if let's say Victor is the owner, and say, okay, Victor, stretch your front leg straighter, right? Try to, press your weight tone down. It's so different from what most teachers will be doing. So you kind of force yourself to make 1 or 2 verbal adjustments. If you are very comfortable in hands-on, that would be great. But you want to make sure that your hands-on skills are good. If not, leave it out verbal, right? Because a lot of new teachers, their touch skills is not that great yet, and meaning too light, too hard, and so be careful if you do decide to do hands-on adjustments in your audition. Number 4, this is a good tip. If you are scared, teach 1 student.
Oh, you mean during the interview or before?
No, you look at one student and teach that one person.
Okay. Why?
So if let's say you have like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 students, right, or whatever, maybe they bring reception in, you have no real experience. So sometimes we get stage fright, right? It's like public speaking as well.
Yep.
If you're facing 200 people
Yep.
and you're scared, having stage fright, you look at one person. And then honestly, you just adjust that person too, because even let's say that person's leg is not straight. When you look at a person, okay, that leg is not straight. Your not straight. Your front leg straight, and then you're actually talking to everyone.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're scared, look at one person and imagine that you're just teaching that person.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. I would actually say yes. You can just pretend that you're teaching that one person, but maybe try to look around the group as well, because otherwise, people will think that you're only picking on one person.
Oh no, I'm just saying, like, you look at one person, you don't say the name. It's just like, it's just my way to get, like, especially if it was something that I learned from public speaking actually. Because just look at one person and imagine that you're just talking to that one single person. But yes, please look around. Please walk around and look at it. All right. I didn't put new students' names, right? So I think that's actually the same thing as observation. If you know the name, use the name. Even if it's his owner, just say it. And good news, right? If you're in an audition, you probably have a few people. Using the names is how you connect to people, and people think that you remember. In a real class full of people, you may not remember. But even if you ended up teaching, that's something that we talked about before. You want to remember a few people's names, and these little details makes a big difference in what kind of impression that you're giving in your audition. Last one, timing. You have 20 minutes. That's not a lot. It's much better if you have opening bit of your sequence and full ending in your 20 minutes. I know it's hard, but practice it. Do it like that instead of trying to have a 10 minutes opening and then have that what you're showing and you're teaching in asana really short, and then you have to quickly wrap up a shavasana or no shavasana. If you can, in 20 minutes, teach a well-rounded class, I think you'll get the job.
And also actually with timing, I would just add again in terms of arrival time. So you want to arrive at least 15 minutes before the scheduled time, because as a yoga teacher, you also are expected to arrive 15 minutes before your teaching time, and especially with with an interview, then I would say even 15 to 20, even 30 minutes, so that you can have time to settle down. You have to do. This is something that you would normally do with a job interview. I don't know about you, but then I usually arrive at least 30 minutes if I'm having a job interview, right? And also, if after class and ask for feedback instantly, leave that time. They might not have feedback for you right away, but then if the owner is also, or the manager is quite experienced, they will probably be able to give you a few words of feedback already. So be available. Even though it's only 20 minutes, get there early. Don't leave right away.
Now, I'm gonna we're 30 minutes, but I'm gonna wrap up with this. What if you don't get the job?
Then
try again.
Yeah.
You know what? I can tell you, the first audition that I did not get a job. And at the studio I'm teaching right now, I also interviewed twice before I get a job. But also, practicing, audition is also a different game, right? So you can just use it as an experience, right? You may have to do a couple of times. You may not get it right. It may be many reasons. They may be just hiring one person, and someone is more experienced than you. I have that experience. And then, but also, if you don't get a job, you know what? Email them and say, oh, understanding, thank you. Can you give me some feedback? Both studios who did not hire me the first time, I worked for them after. Right? So, and they come back to me. I didn't go back to them. They come back to me and say, you know what? We would like to consider you again. So even if you don't get a job, they send me an email and say, I'm sorry, we find someone else. say, oh, okay, no, don't worry, you know, understand that. Can you give me some feedback, right? And then keep that connection going, and then.
You never know.
Exactly. Don't just like
Disappear.
Disappear. Don't do that. So even if you didn't get a job, keep trying and make sure that you ask for feedback.
Be thick skinned.
Very thick skinned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, so I think that wraps up our chat today. Yeah. And so we talked about how to get a job interview or audition at a yoga studio, and once you have the opportunity to be interviewed, what to do to increase the chance of being interviewed. We even talked about, in case you don't get hired, then what you can do in order to keep the conversation going. I mean, remember, you know, if you stop talking to them, then they will never remember you. So even like you said, you know, just be a communicator.
You know, teaching is a practice. Interview also is kind of a practice somehow, right? You know, you the more you do that, the more you develop the skills. And so if you don't get it, that's okay. But if you do, great. Yeah.
So mentorship workshop.
Yep.
Coming up soon, right?
Yes.
It's July 9th and 10th. And it's basically next weekend.
So I know there are a lot of new 200 TTs out there, right? If you just finish your TT, ride on the train so you don't get stuck here. The best thing to do is to keep going, right? You finish your 200 TT, don't you know, just take the next step. Don't wait.
Yeah. So at the workshop, I'm just gonna repeat myself again. We'll talk about more adjustment skills. There will be a lot of opportunities for these teachers to teach each other, so that you know you guys can give each other feedback. Me and Cora will also give you feedback, and we'll also talk a little bit about business of yoga, so you will know how to start thinking yourself as a business owner, rather than just a freelance yoga teacher. And from there, you will also learn how to start promoting your business. So that you will become successful as well.
Yeah, so a lot of teaching practicum, more on sequencing stuff, and having more conversations like this.
Yeah. Okay. So hope to see you there. To sign up, you will find the info on my LinkedIn bio. Is it on yours as well? Yeah. Okay, good. So any questions, just drop us a line. We will love, and maybe if you have other questions as well, just let us know. We'll try our best to answer. Okay. Thank you so much for watching.
All right.
Bye.
See you on Saturday, right?
That's not this Saturday, but the one after.
Okay. Well, then we have the talk on Saturday.